This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of For the Good of the Game. My name is John Davis, JD, and I'm your host. I am very excited tonight to bring a special feature called Host the Hosts. And what you're going to learn is that our three guests tonight are not only awesome coaches, but standout leaders, authors, and hosts of both podcasts as well as instructional sessions to the larger football community. Our first guest is Coach Dustin Mills. He's a social studies teacher and head football coach at James M. Bennett High School in Salisbury, Maryland. Go Clippers. He's the host of the Anchor Down Leadership podcast and has Anchor Down Leadership Consulting dedicated to developing high-level, value-based leaders who will impact and grow their organizations. Coach Mills promotes 5 anchors of leadership: selflessness, commitment and competency, respect in relationships, positivity, and ownership. And we're going to get into the relationships part of that as part of our show tonight. Our second guest, Coach Kenny Simpson, is the head football coach at Searcy High School, a 6A school in Searcy, Arkansas. Go Lions. Prior to Searcy, Kenny served as the head football coach at Southside Charter High School, and before that, as head football coach at Alabama Christian Academy, experiencing success and growing those programs in succession with each step along the way. Coach Simpson is a prolific author, having published 5 books to date, and I personally read 3 of them, and I highly recommend his work. He provides a wealth of instruction and conducts super informative interviews on his YouTube channel. And finally, in addition to being an awesome family man, he's a tireless promoter of the game and helping coaches improve. Our last guest, Coach Anthony Stone, is a physical education teacher at Gregory Elementary and varsity assistant at Boylan Catholic High School in Rockford, Illinois. Go Titans. He has coached at every level from youth football through college and was the defensive coordinator and assistant head coach for the 2017 Women's Australian National Outback Team. That blew me away. He's the host of the Coach Stone podcast on JC Hawks Radio, which is where I discovered him, the publisher of a quarterly digital CSF magazine, host of the Coach Stone Football Back to the Basics YouTube channel, and author of the Back to the Basics Football Drill Manual series, not to mention his rather prolific football youth camps that he runs all over the world. So it is with extreme gratitude and great pleasure that I welcome you 3 gentlemen to the show tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Listen, I'm going to cut right to the chase. As among the many sets of relationships that you guys have to engage in, administrators, parents, athletes, and so on, which set of relationships, I'm not asking you to nail one, but which set of relationships has really proven to be the most pivotal during this pandemic, time that we've gone through? And Coach Mills, if you don't mind, I'm going to let you start off.
Yeah, no problem. I would say that the first relationship that's been the most pivotal would absolutely be my wife. I think as coaches that family time kind of gets overlooked. And, I was reflecting on that today, and none of us would be able to do the things we do without that support from the home side. So the family to me is always the most important, but, extrapolating that into what we do on the field. I think the biggest relationship that's been the most important with this is, aside from the players, because I think it's easy to say players and coaches, I'm looking outside the immediate program, would be with my direct administration. Because we were supposed to play in the fall and then we weren't. And then we were supposed to start and we didn't. And it's kind of just been this whole big hullabaloo and lots of hurdles to jump through. But fortunately, because I have a strong relationship with our athletic director, our vice principal in charge of athletics, and our principal, we've really been able to navigate those barriers with very minimal impact on what we're doing. It's a headache and a pain, but at the same time, we all know we're working towards the same goal. And I think that's been huge for me and huge for our program, coming into this as a first-year head coach, dealing with all these hurdles, but knowing that what I did, that the people above me had my back and were willing to help me out, has been huge for me in that regard. So that would be probably, again, outside of the team, coaching staffs and players, those are always important. That's been probably the relationship that's been the most critical for me during this time.
Coach Stone, I'm going to let you go next. In terms of you enjoying relationships at two different schools, and coaching at multiple levels, how's it been for you?
I think during the pandemic, I think it's been like phenomenal in a way. I mean, I was able to, like, some old players from our 2007 Australia team reached out to me and asked if I could help with, like, I coached a game this past fall. I was very fortunate to call a game for the ladies, and I had a blast. Never did 7-on-7 football before. And, my thing is with my players, and they know they're listening to this, they know I'm really upfront and honest. And I say how it is. So, like, with the ladies, I was like, listen, if we run this outside zone and they line up in this formation, we're going to take it to the house on the very first play. And that's what we did. And they were like all excited, ecstatic, and, coaching women and men, and no matter how old, from little to old to the oldest person I ever coached, I think it's phenomenal seeing success breed in them. With the little kids, coaching the little kids, it was tough because I didn't get to see them because everything was like shut down and everything. But I was able to do a social distance camp for the park district in my facility. I did Rockford Park District. I did a social distance flag camp, and we had over 100 kids, and I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was great to see the kids look on their face, the smiles. It's one thing I love about coaching multiple levels. You can do different types of coaching styles, and you got to do that with even if you're coaching just high school, every kid's like a snowflake. It's going to be different. And then with the high school kids, we got to see them in the fall. I don't know if Dustin, I know Coach Simpson coached in the fall. I don't know if Coach Mills had fall ball, like we would have. Yeah. It was great to see them. The biggest thing was, just getting them to do things like, one, stay eligible. With our kids, we didn't have that trouble with, but I think when you were remote or whatever, we've been in person since the beginning. So since August, when we went back in August, we were in full person, and so was the high school, and so was the grade school I was at. And I think that was huge for a lot of kids. But then we had remote kids too, and just keeping like tabs on it and everything. And the great thing is, like, coaches are always complaining before the pandemic about Fortnite. Well, from when we shut down in March and we came back in August, the kids were tired of Fortnite. So I don't know if you two coaches had that issue, but the kids didn't want to play Fortnite anymore or Madden anymore because they were playing it all the time. And, just giving them the utmost truth and things like that. I thought, those are the things with building relationships with the parents per se. It's hard not to see them. If you're working outside in the elementary school, you wave to them in the car, but they're wearing their mask and things like that. They know who I am because I'm always wearing shorts. But I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's really a hard question to answer because we were pretty much locked down for most of the time during that thing. So, and
I understand,
being an assistant coach, you don't really get to talk to the parents as much. And then now with games coming back, I don't know if Coach Mills has it, but only the home team can bring 50 people. So if my family comes, that's almost 25% of the 50 people. So that's not going to happen. I told my head coach. So yeah, that's the answer I have for that one.
Well, I appreciate it. And Coach Simpson, I'm gonna punch you a little curveball there. I mean, you've got the vast amount of experience at a head coach in 3 different schools, and certainly before that as an assistant. But you were a first year head coach at this school. So how did that play in terms of using that knowledge from prior jobs coming into Searcy and kind of trying to amplify those relationships?
I really think that COVID made us all first-year head coaches. I've been around the block and I've done it a while, but I've never had anything like this. And so it was a lot of learning on my end. And coaches have kind of already mentioned, it's relationships are everything in our world. And when you can't do certain things that you're used to doing, it really makes you reevaluate. So to me, the players, I thought we did a pretty good job of relating with them, but a lot of the community events that I'm used to doing and being able to meet people and do things, those were gone. And so that was a huge obstacle. It still is an obstacle, something I've got to try to figure out ways to get to know people, because we've lived in Searcy now for 6 or 7 months now, and I still don't think I've met every parent. We had to do our parent meeting virtually, and so it was definitely a challenge. Dustin, I know, is a first-year head coach, but I felt like a first-year head coach here, and I think I've done it for a while. But to me, it was very, very difficult. Man, this year was rough for every coach because you had to figure out different ways of thinking and trying to communicate. And I'm being older, I think, was a disadvantage. I wasn't as technologically skilled as a lot of these younger coaches, so I had to lean on them a lot to communicate. Have them help me communicate with parents and with people that I wasn't actually seeing. I tend to do pretty well face to face, but I had to learn this online, learn how to do all that stuff that I thought I kind of knew. That became the most important part of communication. It was very difficult.
That's I cannot imagine thinking back. When I actively coached last was at the high school level and maintaining, just the day to day, parents picking up kids, being able to go out and meet them at the car, say hi, or how's Johnny doing today, or this and that, those kind of things just went by the wayside. I can't imagine the challenges. So given the already demanding job and workload that each of you guys have, it blows me away the degree to which all three of you are doing so much extra stuff. And, oh, by the way, all three of you have families. Coach Stone's case, he's got 5 kids, he's got a basketball team. So, playing
his own defense every day.
But, what is it that motivates each of you to go above and beyond the normal coaching duties that you have at your school, or in Coach Stone's case at the school, to share and really lead within the football community? And Coach Simpson, I'm going to ask you to go first on this one.
Well, man, I appreciate it. And it's, I get asked that a lot, by people that are local and by their coaches. And I have a couple of just short answers. One, my hobby is football, so I feel like I'm doing what I would be doing anyway. Like when I have free time, I study football. And when I have a chance to, do whatever I want to, I like to connect to other coaches. That's it's become what I really enjoy doing. And so, it's a balance for sure, because you've got to make sure you're pouring all your time into your own program, and because those kids deserve your best, but to me, I think Derek Smith's one of the guys I used to coach with. He said this when we were coaching together, and it kind of stuck with me. If I'm putting things out on social media or on YouTube, my kids that I'm working with at Searcy, I think we're pretty blessed. I think we've got a pretty good staff, and I think we got a lot of good things going the right way. And I inherited a lot of that. Same thing when I was at Southside. But there are kids and coaches who are not in that situation. And if I can maybe encourage those guys or give them something that can help their program. And I'm not just talking about scheme stuff. I get asked a lot about scheme, but what I really care about talking about is how to impact young men, how to impact young coaches, and how to get us to focus on the things that matter. And so to me, the tool to do that is getting on a whiteboard and talking about offense or defense. But the reality for me is, how can I help a young coach impact his players to be better men? If I can reach 1 or 2 people, that's my whole goal with that.
That's awesome. How about you, Coach Stone?
I think that's the reason why I wrote books, right? Because, I worked for a big company, and, one day they just said, hey, we don't need you anymore. And I was like, okay, great. I didn't say that, but I was like, hey, did I do anything wrong? And they're like, no, you were fine. You were like one of our best players. We just go in a different direction. And then, again, like Coach Mills says, I'm going to bring up my wife, because my wife's like, you should do something, and then I always had like a little tagline, like, back to the basics and things like that. And that's how my company became, because my wife named the company. She's named everything. She even named, like Coach Mills knows, she even named our magazine, that we're a part of. And, the biggest thing I would say is this: when we played, all three of us, because we're almost all the same age, I would hope, we would remember if we got something wrong. Well, I never did, because I made it purpose. I didn't like running. But if you got something wrong, you would run around, and you were a marathon runner. And, a lot of coaches would say, give me 110%. And I've said it before in a blog. I said, I've never seen 110% pizza, so just give it everything you have. If you can look in the mirror and say, and you did everything you're supposed to do, that's what you need to do. And by just doing the little things and improving on things, by just doing the fundamentals, is huge. And by coaches asking questions, or insertion schedules, or the thing that Coach Mills and I have talked about before, like the VARC, How do you put a play in, or how do you explain something to a kid? Is it visual, audio, read and write, and then kinesthetic going over it? And that's everything that I do, even at the high school. Like right now, I don't know if Coach Mills has this problem, but we have basketball season still going on, even though football season started. So we have 30 players that are not right now practicing with us. We practice 3 hours with the guys, and then we have to come back to the school because basketball practice ended, and then we're practicing another 3 hours with those guys. And
Wow.
It's really hard because we brought guys up that were sophomores and freshmen to varsity to play with us this year, because just so we have the numbers, because we don't know what's going to happen. Coach Simpson already played this season. He could tell you, hey, I had 1 COVID case, or I had 0 COVID cases, or I played a team that I couldn't even play because I had so many COVID cases. We're doing it where we're just going to be like this. We're going to bring everyone that could contribute up, and then we're just going to go with it. And if everyone is great, then let's roll the dice and let everyone play. And I think that's very important, because if not, and you have 1 quarterback or 2 quarterbacks, and then they get contained, then what are we going to do? Bring a freshman up that never got coached to run varsity offense? So what we're doing is separating practices. So if they get called up, they're ready to rock and roll, and Coach Cacciatore does a great job. And, part of my thing is just making sure they know everything that he's putting in. And, it's tough because you're doing like a whole 6-hour day, or whatever, 2.5 hour day. But then I'm still driving 30 minutes one way, 30 minutes back to practice. And, I would say the fundamentals, getting stuff done, and telling coaches, just because you were coached that in the past doesn't mean you have to coach like that now, because these other coaches, and you two coaches, I think we talked about this. If my youth coach coached today, he'd probably be in jail. I don't know if you guys would be the same boat, but I know mine would definitely be, for the things how he did and treated us.
Yeah,
So,
I tell people all
back
the
to
time.
basic fundamentals.
One of my favorite quotes from my coach when I was in 4th grade, my second year of playing football, was, as we were running, he would say, "Drinking water is highly overrated." So, I just Coach Simpson, Coach Mills, when you look at all the things that you've got on your plate right now, and I've listened to about 6 episodes, 5 episodes of the podcast. What really do you feel inside that motivates you to do that? As well as the other things you're doing, besides the football program.
I think it's kind of echo what both coaches said before me. It's something, one, that I'm passionate about. I grew up, I have a very diverse background, growing up in a military family, moving around the world my entire life, seeing all sorts of different leadership. And then I, spent several years working in politics, and I learned a lot about negative leadership in that regard. But, having seen it all, and kind of like Coach Simpson was touching on, scheme is the thing that's sexy, man. Everybody wants to talk scheme. They want to talk X's and O's, and I get it. I really do. But at the end of the day, if you boil down football, it's all based around the same essential concepts. And the X's and O's are really about what does your team do better and what can make your team execute better. So in my opinion, there's a limited amount of schemes you can use. And I know someone will get on me for that, but I think at the same day, it's all about concepts, and there's a limited amount of concepts. We all want to get our best player the ball. Well, no kidding. How do we do that? We all want to make plays in space. Okay, there's a million different ways to do that, but whatever. That's the end goal. So what I've kind of looked into is what are the other ways that we can promote excellence? What are the other ways that we can develop young men to be, men of character, to be great husbands, sons, fathers when they grow up? All those things. And then how can we kind of establish that human competitive edge? What makes us better competitors on game day? And it's a culture, it's a system, it's all those things in place. And kind of my passion for studying that, half the reason I talk about it on the podcast is just because I want to talk about it. It's something that I really enjoy thinking about and, processing, and, hoping that some of my thoughts can help some other people. Starting in January, I started recording some interviews with other people. I am way behind on content now that the season has started, and there's only 24 hours in a day, unfortunately. But I've got a couple things backlogged I just got to edit. But those conversations have been great because it allows for people who have experience in positions of leadership outside of football. I think, football is a very insular environment. It's tribal, I call it, kind of like Coach Stone was touching on. Coaches tend to coach the way they were coached. It's like that old tribe where we're all sitting around and the chief is telling us, this is how you do things. Well, then we become the chief and we tell the new people under us, this is how we do things. And that system kind of propagates itself. The problem is both have touched on, that system that we used to have is not successful in 2021 in contemporary times, especially in light of the COVID situation. So getting guys to think about different ways to do things, being open to new ways of thinking, both whether it has to do with the way they organize their practices, the way they pick their captains, the way they organize their strength and conditioning. I'm not a strength and conditioning guy per se. I don't have any certifications, but it's, again, something I'm passionate about. I competed in some strength sports in the past, and I can see what I did when I was a kid. I remember going in and we did dumbbell flies and bench press and just a bunch of stuff. You're like, okay, how is that helping us on the field? And it really wasn't. So thinking outside the box, trying to understand that just because something is different or unique or creative doesn't mean it's wrong. But at the same time, also understanding just because something is different, creative, and unique doesn't mean it's right either. Understanding that just because something is hot doesn't mean it's successful. And I think a discerning coach, someone who is self-aware, understands those things. And that's what I'm trying to help guys understand, is just, be self-aware, understand how you can grow as a coach and a leader, and how then that trickles down, growing your assistants, growing your players. And, I firmly believe, and I think both coaches agree with me, that your culture kind of sets everything. I'm a big believer that a successful culture will win games when you focus on the culture building. Whereas when you focus on winning games, you're going to be up and down and your culture is going to suffer. And, I talked to somebody earlier today and I told them, I said, I'd much rather be thought of as a mediocre football coach and a good person versus a, great football coach and a mediocre person. And I think when we do that, and that's our mindset, it helps our players grow into great young men, productive members of society. And that's, again, just something that I like talking about. And, I hope other people like listening to it because, it's just a way to help others think in a different mindset, I hope.
Well, and for me, I understand, because I'm doing two different projects right now on the side to try and help youth sports in general recover coming out of this pandemic. I've been doing a ton of reading and watching a lot of content that the Aspen Institute has done, and looking at things like the NIL that's coming down the pipe and all of those things. And for me, it's really about, how do you share information and try and improve the landscape overall? Because something I learned really 12 years ago before I opened my sports academy, and it's still true today, that has held up, is that 70% of kids in the United States stop playing youth sports by the age of 13. And I think that's a travesty. When you look at the things that have been amplified by this pandemic, the anxiety and stress, and even, mental health issues and suicide, things like that. It's in sports, it's been proven time and time again with science that sports and activity help with that kind of stuff. And personally, as a football junkie, I think football is the best of those. Coach Stone, you've got so many irons in the fire that I just literally stand in awe. I mean, I'm a person that has shiny object syndrome. I'm sure you guys have all heard of that. I cannot imagine how much success you've been able to generate as you juggle all these balls. So what are the key relationships that you rely on to get all that stuff done? Or do you kind of compartmentalize and do it, in some type of priority?
I would say I put it on a list. Coach Simpson was supposed to be a guest on my podcast tonight. In fact, with the passing of BJ Coletta's dad, I am back like Coach Mills. I'm back like 5-6 guests, so I have to slow down with my guests, she said. So by making a weekly list, I want to get done and things like that, that really helps me. When I had the Australian job last April, when I signed a deal with them to create the coaching accreditation program, that took a lot of my time, and my wife helping me with just saying, hey, listen, we'll take the kids for a walk so you can do some voiceovers and things like that, because it's hard to do voiceovers when you have 5 kids upstairs trying to go to bed. And, it's not easy. And it was a lot of work and things like that. And then with the books and everything, when I write my books, I only write when I want to now, because I've learned a long time ago that if you just start writing, you're not going to get what you want on paper for those coaches. And I think what's really important is the books I have coming out now, they're taking longer just because I want to make sure I put stuff in them that are there. And I want to make sure that everything is hit, and I want to thank any coach who's ever said, hey, Coach Stone, you should make a DIY book, or you should make this book. And I did. And, I was very happy I did it, and I do those quotes, weekly quotes.
Yep.
And I've been doing those for a while. And then I stopped because I got so busy with football. And these coaches know during the football season, it's hard to get stuff done.
Sure.
Because then you're coming home, in my household, because we have so many kids, my wife and I decided to make a rule last March is, when you walk in the door, you take a shower and you get cleaned off right away. You put the clothes in the washing machine and just get them done, and then you can come to civilization, how we call it in our house, because, it's important that, I had COVID really bad last November, lost 30 pounds. I mean, I wish it on nobody. That's how bad it was, and I know everyone gets it differently, and my whole family got it except my wife, because, like all these other wives we have in here, coaches' wives, are like angels. And she has that rare blood type that, like, it doesn't really, they get it, but, it's really hard to get. So, I think just making a list, a to-do list each week, starting on Monday. And if you have 40 things, see what you can get through when you have time, and, don't stress about things. I mean, the biggest thing is this: if you get things accomplished, or if you touch one person, like Coach Simpson said, that's the MasterCard commercial in my thing, the priceless memory, the quote, the 5-day-a-week quotes, the CSF magazine thing that I threw out to everyone, and, just giving back is the biggest thing I would say with that question, and I mean, that's, I don't know what to say, but it's making a list. And if it wasn't for my wife, I'd probably be crazy. That's what it is.
Well, that's, I mean, Dustin talked about it right off the bat, and I've been married 36 years, so I understand. It's, it's a journey. So, Coach Simpson, in the past month, you've hosted some premier football coaches in the state of Arkansas, and nationally for that matter, to name the 4 that I've listened to. Buck James, Van Pascal, Bo Hembry, and Kevin Kelly, all of which were phenomenal conversations. When you leverage those relationships to share information about programs and techniques and things like that, what message do you hope kind of permeates the coaches in Arkansas as well as the larger coaching community?
Yeah, and I'm going to get to that. I want to make sure, because all these other 2 guys have thanked their wife, and so have you. And I want to make sure that I plug pretty much, if you've seen me write, you know that somebody edited and cleaned that up and made it look smart. And that's my spouse. So I want to kind of throw that out there real quick.
That's awesome.
But we had, in Arkansas, we kind of had that big snowstorm come through, about probably 2-3 weeks ago. And so we pretty much were locked back in our houses for, a week. And so to me, I just kind of put something out there about, hey, is there a coach? I really wanted to focus on Arkansas, because I'm kind of, I want to represent my state and bring them to the light of, put them in front of as many people as possible. So now getting to your question, to me, having those guys on, one, it was a way to kind of honor them. I called those guys and said, hey, look, I respect you a ton. You clearly have done a great job, and I'd love to ask you a few questions that I want to know myself. And I know if I want to know them, I want to put them out there for other guys that may want to hear the same thing. And they were all very gracious. I didn't get told no by anybody. All 4 of them said yes. And so had them come on, and, they were all very different, and that's kind of what I wanted to highlight was you had a guy who won the 7A state championship. You had a guy who was won like 6 out of 7 at the 5A level. And you had a guy who's beaten me several years when I was back at 4A and has won a couple. And then you had Van Pascal, who's been all over the place and kind of an older coach. And I wanted the diversity of our state to show through. And to me, I wanted to see what is the theme, what's the constant theme going to be from these guys, because they're successful. all of them run different offenses. They all run different defenses. Some of them go for it on fourth down all the time. Some of them are more conservative. Some of them love the weight room. Some of them love analytics. But what I found was the consistent theme was all of them love their players. All of them love what they did. And all of them I know have continued to study football. And these are guys that I kind of look up to. These are guys that I want to be like that guy. And they're continuing to study football even after winning. One of them had won 3 state championships in a row. One of them had won 6 of the last 7. And what are they doing this offseason? They're doing what I'm doing. They're trying to get better. And I thought that was really cool. And I really wanted to put our state out there. I think I'm not from Arkansas, so I didn't know what Arkansas football was about. I kind of thought I'm from Alabama. That's kind of, Alabama. But then I got out to Arkansas and realized, wait a minute, whoa, I kind of stepped into something here. There's some guys here that are really, really good, and wanted to kind of give them a moment. And I think that's, what you're doing tonight. You want to highlight coaches that are gracious with their time and let them share their knowledge and just kind of see where it goes. And that's what we did.
Yeah, I think that I want to ask Dustin one more question, and then I'll get to my last question so we can wrap up. And it relates to that. And I appreciate you doing that, because for a guy who's not actively coaching right now myself, when I can share with other coaches, and I've got, like, for instance, I meet with a guy once a month. We have kind of a dual mentorship. He's another Army retiree, coaches youth football, was our local commissioner, and he's getting ready to try and he's still coaching. He's getting ready to try and do a sports academy. And we get together and we talk football to help each other stay active and stay current. And by doing all this stuff and listening to you guys and folks like you, it helps me stay young. I mean, at age 62, when I'm, getting ready to get up and get in the gym in the morning, it's not always not always feeling like I want to hit the weight room at that point. But Coach Mills, I got one more. It's interesting that the Bennett High School Clippers have a pirate for the mascot. They've got an anchor in the school's logo. Now, did you choose Anchor Down before you got there, or did you decide to name it that after you came to the school?
It's
Dustin, be careful before you answer that.
That's right. Yeah.
Tell us right now.
It's all one holistic approach is what it came down to. Grew up in a Navy family, so the anchor has always meant something to me in that regard. Growing up, being a huge fan of Navy football, living on Navy bases, and just being soaked in that Navy tradition.
Sure.
That was always a huge part. So it's kind of ironic that I end up at a school that has nautical themes. So, when I started thinking, it anchored down kind of became a thing that I was saying several years ago. Kind of relating to the idea of staying anchored to your core values, that no matter what happens, what does an anchor do? It holds you in place so you don't drift. And that's kind of, what I look at our core values as, we hold on to those no matter what's going on. So, when you lose 4 or 5 games in a row sometimes, or you're having some bad practices or whatever, you don't panic and you don't start to go, we need to do this. No, what are your core values? You stay anchored to those. And I firmly believe when you do that, eventually the thing will right itself. It's so I can't say it's because I'm at a school with nautical themes, but it certainly did help tie into that. So it's kind of funny in that regard. And now I've kind of taken that and run with it. If I ever went to another school, it's something I would carry with me, because I do believe that it's an important concept. And I'm sure there's a million different ways to say it, but to me, it's always been a pretty strong icon. People know what an anchor is, although I've never understood, coaches, maybe you can look at this, women or things that get these tattoos that say refuse to sink and it's an anchor. I'm like, if you've got an anchor that refuses to sink, that's a pretty terrible anchor. So I've seen that on some of these webs, some of these Etsy and things like that again, my wife sends me on Pinterest. But yeah, it's something that I would carry with me, because it is important to stay anchored down to those core values. I think it's just a super convenient image, and it's something that's personal to me as far as to how I grew up and kind of what I was, how I was taught things. So it all kind of tied in very well and very conveniently. I will say that much.
Well, I'm gonna put this out there publicly now, and I hope it doesn't shoot me in the foot. But there's a guy who is I think he's the wide receivers coach, special teams coordinator, and assistant head coach at Vanderbilt, named Justin Lustig. He's been a guest on the podcast before. He coached at Edinburgh, was the head coach there where my son played. And then he went to Syracuse, and I'm a Syracuse grad. So I'm making a prediction that, at whatever time that you decide to, go to college, it needs to be Vandy, because that's going to keep the theme going. So, and I'm not a Vanderbilt fan necessarily, but listen, I've got one more question I'd like to ask each of you. And I want to be respectful of your time. We've been on for about 35 minutes. So one thing that I noticed that has been common during the pandemic, and I've asked several guys this offline, is that I have seen a new and refreshing willingness on behalf of coaches at all levels to share their expertise. Now, I would tell you again, I started coaching back in the mid 90s and coached all the way through. It's about 20 plus years with a year in between. I ran the NFL's JPD program here in Kentucky for 5 years. I was involved in fact, in the year of 2001, I was coaching 3 football teams in various aspects, because my kids all played and I wanted to coach my kids. My experience was that coaches holding their stuff close to the vest. They didn't want to share. And Kenny, I'm going to let you go first with this one. What is it about this generation of the coaches that we have now, or is it possibly partly a result of the pandemic that has caused so much willingness to share openly and really help each other out?
Man, I think there's a couple things. One, first of all, not everybody's on board with this. I think probably 90% of the coaches are, but if you're going to run the slot T or the Baylor offense, you still got to pry and find it. It's hard to find. So there are some close secrets that are held. But to me, it's the growth of social media, the platform that is out there now, specifically Twitter, although Facebook and other groups is there as well. But the fact that it's easily to access, it used to be I'd have to go load up and go to some clinic, and we love the Glazier clinics. That's where we'd go. And that's really the only time I'd ever connect with a guy outside of my staff that talked football. And so it's the only time I really got to see football beyond whatever I was being taught by that head coach. So that has been a tremendous shift. So social media, YouTube, like we're doing, all the time, you can go search up different things. But as far as the mindset of coaches, and I can just speak for me, I can't speak for everybody. I think it has been that we've seen some coaches with tremendous success kind of open the vault and share what they have. Guys that were successful, and you start to realize, wait a minute, that's not like a secret recipe. I think that's kind of been what it has been, is when people start to realize, like for me, I'll share whatever you want, X's and O's, because, I could find the best recipe from the best chef in France. He could send it to me and it would taste like hot garbage because I don't know how to cook it. And I think that's kind of where people go, or I go with scheme is, the guys that talk to me a lot about X's and O's, I think they're at least trying. The guys that start asking the questions of why and how, those are the guys that kind of get it, because now they're going to be able to blend that with what they want to do. And I think that's, to me, why you're seeing a lot of coaches that are open to share, because if you don't know how to ask the right questions or how to mix up the ingredients, it's not going to do you a lot of good. So that's kind of a lot of the X and O thing. And the other part for me is I'm old enough to recognize that, I want football to be great when I'm gone. I've got a 13-year-old son who I plan to coach through him, and then we'll kind of see after that. So I know that I'm either at 5 years or maybe 20. I don't know how long I'm going to be in this game, but soon I'll be gone, and the next generation of coaches, I want to see them do what they're already doing, and it's taken our game to a whole new level. And it's been unbelievable to watch that. So to me, kind of being I don't know if I'm on the end of my career, but I'm on the back nine, getting to watch these younger guys come through and maybe help them has been something I've really enjoyed doing.
Yeah, it always frustrated me. When I was in the early 2000s and I was a volunteer assistant with the freshman team and then helping out with the varsity at my oldest son's high school, it used to frustrate me a lot because I would volunteer because I had time, even though I was on active duty. I'd say, hey, coach, let me put the plays together. We ran the wing T. So let me put the plays together. Let me put a playbook, because he didn't use a playbook and he wouldn't do it. He and I'm still friends with him, God bless him, but he just would not. He was so worried about having that stuff in print that somebody would get it. I mean, so
hey,
anyway.
Let him know that we all know how to run buck sweep now. So.
Yeah, that's right. There are no more secrets.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Anthony, what do you think about, what do you think? I know it's the same question, but in your neck of the woods and for what you go through, what do you think has made the difference?
I think with people, technology has been a huge thing, right? And, the biggest thing I've noticed with younger teachers, younger coaches that don't do technology, it's tough because they have a hard time doing it. Even the older coaches do. And if you don't have that tech guy, it really does hurt sometimes, or whoever to help you with that. I think by coaches are getting better now, where Mills, and I think Kenny Simpson knows Nick Bandstrom. Like, he does a great thing with his YouTube channel, gives out free content all the time. And I think there's no secrets. Like everyone said, like everyone runs this, or the recipe, like Kenny Simpson says. I mean, I've coached for coaches that don't want to give a playbook. So I would actually make them for myself, even though I want to see it too. I think during everything that's gone on with everything we've done, and from March to March now, I think we've had success with like the coach in Texas that started the TikTok thing, and now he's at Division I school. I mean, I'm very happy for the guy, and it's well deserved. I mean, he did everything, and with coaches giving out the free content or like free books, or just taking a phone call or taking a Zoom and doing things to help grow the game. Because, John, I'll tell you this truthfully, I left the game a couple of years ago, like probably 5-6 years ago. I stopped coaching just because it was getting bad, and I didn't want to coach somewhere where the kids are laying on their backs and then hitting each other in high school. I didn't want to do that. And I worked for the company that says you shouldn't do that. So it's pretty bad if I go speak somewhere and then my team's doing it. So I stopped coaching. And then when I came back from coaching, and coaching is like a drug that we all know that we have to have, and we have to do it all the time. And that just started the thing with the books and everything else. And I want to thank all those coaches. There's plenty of coaches. Mills, you have, Coach Steve, PJ Davis, Darren Sheffer. I mean, run the podcast. They give all this content to help coaches grow. And like Kenny says, when you ask the questions, more questions than just like trying to take the thing and bring it over, everyone can bring butt sweep over. But if you don't know how to do everything when a time comes, if someone blitzes or if they have a nose that just bull rushes, if you don't have those things, it's not going to work. So, with all the coaches, I mean, I know I was a little off topic, but I want to thank all the coaches that have given their time during this whole time and help grow the game. And I think when we do get back to normal, a lot of things will look different, like glaziers and things like that, because we're doing those. A lot of coaches are doing those right now, like yourself right now doing this.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I think what we will see is kind of a hybrid. I think you'll end up having, like you go to Nashville to the American Football Coach Association convention, but then you're going to have all kinds of guys who maybe pay a little less money and get a ticket to watch on Zoom, because they can't travel or their school can't afford it or whatever. Dustin, I'm going to give you kind of the last say. What do you think in terms of, that maybe hasn't been said, or if you want to just double down on something as far as why guys are sharing more?
I think, kind of touch on what both of them have said, kind of we're seeing a younger generation, for many, many years, you had coaches who held onto these jobs for 15, 20, 25 years at the same school. The head coach that I'm replacing was there for 19 years. And the guy before him had been there since, I want to say 1977. So, I'm the third head coach in over a 30-year span at the school, but we're starting to see some of these long tenured coaches retired be replaced with guys who grew up in more of a technology age, who grew up in an age that values working together versus trying to do things yourself. And I think that coupled with us all sitting at home during COVID. It came down to, we kind of needed our football fix. How could we get it? Well, I can't watch it unless I've got old recorded games. Hey, let me talk to some other coaches and see what they do. And, as Coach Simpson said, for me personally, Twitter has been a huge tool. And I encourage all my assistant coaches to get on Twitter. From conversations with other coaches to other coaches just sharing, X's and O's content, philosophical. I've got all sorts of people I follow from literally around the globe that some deal with football, some have nothing to do with football, but they deal with sports and they deal with performance and things like that. And those are resources that 2 years ago I didn't have. There are resources that 2 years ago I wish I had. But now, because of the time afforded to us, by being in, I don't use the word lockdown for a variety of reasons, but being constrained to our houses, it gave us time and we had to fill it. That's the whole reason I got into podcasting, was simply, I had the time during the summer. I was sitting at home. I was like, I might as well use this. I didn't have summer ball. We didn't have weight training. We didn't, so it was allowed me an outlet to talk about football. So, that, and I think it's also just it's a group of people who are more willing to share. I'm a firm believer that I should be able to hand you my playbook and still beat you based on execution. You know what I mean? Because kind of like I said at the very beginning, there's only so many principles that apply when it comes to X's and O's. Gap scheme and zone scheme are different in their delivery, but they're both trying to get the same process done. And, so taking that nugget and then applying it to that, saying, okay, so we can all share and we can take tidbits from here and different ideas from here. And just, it's been great to see this kind of openness of a mindset by a lot of coaches. Now, as we alluded to, not all of them are that way. But it's, I think in the next few years, it's going to become even more and more prevalent. We always enjoyed going to Glazers, not just for the content, but as Coach said, hanging out with other coaches, man, that was always a good time. Seeing the guys that, you only see once a year, maybe even the guys you play once a year, but you're not bitter rivals with, and you kind of shoot the breeze and hang out with them, or guys you went to college with who now coach at different all those things. We realized we can do that without having to go to a 3.5-star hotel in a big city that charges you double for parking. You know what I mean? And we got the same thing done. And then I went, okay, cool, shut it down. And then I went and laid down and took a nap. It's kind of been great in that regard. It's allowed us to do things that we wouldn't normally be able to do, and still learn on a much more personal level than sitting in a lecture hall with 75 other coaches, listening to a Division I coach talk about something you're looking at going, I know my guys can't execute, so it's really been much more personal. I think that's why guys are more willing to listen as well. The stuff we're getting from Coach Simpson, from Coach Stone, and all these different sources, it's successful high school coaches. It's guys who have been doing it for a long time. It's not your D1 guys. It's not your NFL guys. And those guys are great. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of times what they want to do doesn't apply to what we want to do. And I think kind of success begets success there, right? As we learn, hey, this is working for us. We wanted more. So I think that's kind of one of the reasons all this sharing is happening.
Yeah. It's, if you remember the movie, Remember the Titans, I was sitting on the sidelines in the Alamo Dome watching the All-American Bowl, and I was sitting with Coach Boone and the real life Coach Boone. And he turned to me, and I was in charge of hiring all of the former NFL players and coaches that worked camps for Football University. And he turned to me and just out of the blue, he goes, why don't you hire more high school coaches? We probably know more than half those guys anyway. We've been coaching longer than they have. And, or words to that effect. And what I have found is that the level of sophistication in the game has moved down so far that it is amazing to me. I played quarterback in high school and college. I was not taught to do a pre-snap read until I got to college. My high school coach didn't teach me that. And he played quarterback in college. So now I go to camps and I see 8th graders who are capable of identifying what the coverage is, whether it's man or zone, if it's heavy, if a linebacker's coming, if they expect a blitz, and all this kind of stuff. So to me, what is so gratifying is that all of this sharing is, as Kenny said, really growing the game, but it's growing the next generation so that not only are the coaches better, but the players benefit as well. So I tell you what, everybody that's going to see this is going to benefit. And I certainly have. And gentlemen, I apologize for taking the full 45 minutes, but thank you for being so gracious with your time. Coach Anthony Stone, Coach Kenny Simpson, Coach Dustin Mills, thanks for being on For the Good of the Game. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do so.
Thanks for
having us.
Thanks so much. And thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.